Welcome to BYU Radio's Big Stories, telling the amazing and inspiring tales from the Big 12 and beyond. I'm your host, Cleon Wall, and today I've got a special guest for a special episode. You've heard her name at the end of many episodes here on Big Stories. Her name is Whitney Sheffield. Whitney, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Cleon. I'm super excited to be here.
All right, so we've come to the end of Season 2 of Big Stories from BYU Sports Nation and BYU Radio, and we thought we would share our favorite moments of the season. So that's our plan in this episode. We'll give you top 3-4 moments from the Season 2 and play part of the episode so you get an idea of why we like them so much. Now, I will tell you that we encourage you to listen to all the episodes of Season 1 and Season 2. Some of them might be a little bit out of date, but you'll find something inspiring and uplifting in every one of them. Like J.C. Hupp, it was from the University of Wyoming's big story that we did of her. She lost her parents and her niece in an explosion at her parents' house. But then during the middle of her grief, she was hired as the University of Wyoming's head women's rodeo coach. She's got a great story to tell. Another would be Jeff Grimes, who was the offensive coordinator at Kansas this past season. By the way, he's since moved on to Wisconsin to become their offensive coordinator. For most of the episode, we talked about what it's like for he and his wife to keep their family together despite the number of moves they've had in their lifetime. This move to Madison, Wisconsin, it will be their 15th since he became a college assistant football coach. The other part of the episode was about the adoption of their daughter, Jada, which was really cool, too. So go back and listen to that one. You might find inspiration from J.J. Van Niel. He's Arizona State's volleyball coach. He didn't get into full-time coaching until after he spent more than a decade in the finance world. His wife thought he was crazy, but he's helped to turn around the Sun Devils volleyball program. So those are just a few of our 26 great stories we shared this past year, and then we have over 20 from Season 1, so please go back and listen to them. We're proud of them. So we just mentioned J.J. Van Niel, but we wouldn't know anything about him if it were not for Maddie McLaughlin, and that brings us to one of Whitney's favorite moments of Season 2.
Maddie's story really was one of my favorites I got to work on this season. She just is so relatable and raw in her interviews, just really easy to relate to. But Maddie grew up always loving sports, super active. But her freshman year of high school, she starts to have some really strange symptoms. She was playing basketball and volleyball, and then out of nowhere, she just gets so sick that her parents have to pull her out of school and sports because she can't even function just on a normal daily basis. And I really can't even imagine how hard this would be, but Maddie talks about how she was completely bedridden, and she didn't even have enough strength to walk down her driveway to the mailbox. And during this time, she's visiting multiple doctors a week, and no one has any answers. And it takes almost 2 years before she finally gets a diagnosis that she has Lyme disease. In the next soundbite, you'll hear from Maddie and her mom, Mary McLaughlin.
But first, we went full Western medical approach. And so that was just carpet bombing myself with antibiotics, basically. So we did that, and I ended up with a gallbladder attack because I think we may have overdone it a little bit.
But words of wisdom from Maddie's therapist kept her going.
I was handing over a lot of my power to doctors, saying, okay, I need you to fix me, give me the silver bullet. And so she helped me to realize that I had a lot more say in my own health journey than I think I had realized at that point.
And the switch was, I'm going to have to heal myself. In retrospect, she and I both think that was one of the most helpful therapies of everything that she did.
The McLaughlins tried alternative remedies. Mom and daughter drove across the Canadian border from their New York home to receive vitamin C infusions and ozone treatments.
There were moments when I felt like I literally cannot live like this. It's really hard for me to kind of put this into words, but it felt like I have to overcome this. I have to beat this, because I was miserable every day, in pain, mentally, physically, emotionally, and it felt like that can't be my future. I can't keep doing this for decades.
And that felt like a turning point in a sense.
So just a little bit about me. I'm a student here and I play lacrosse at BYU. And about a year ago, I tore my ACL. And it's been a really long recovery for me. But something that I've learned about recovering from illness and injury is that absolutely it is a physical battle, but more than that, it's really a mental battle. So it was so inspiring for me to listen to Maddie's story and hear how she really stopped waiting for doctors or people around her to just give her this magic solution, but she really took control of her journey. Maddie eventually gets healthy enough to return to volleyball. She has an incredible senior season, and then against all odds, gets recruited to play college volleyball for ASU. And she now is a professional athlete.
And there's so much more to Maddie's story, Whitney, about how she ended up at ASU, and we encourage you to go listen to that. I think the thing that I take away from Maddie is her no quit attitude, is that she and her parents tried to find a cure for her. And when they found out it was Lyme disease, most people, they have symptoms or they have problems later on in their life. It's almost like a lifetime thing to have Lyme disease. But it's amazing that she was able to basically conquer that and become a professional volleyball player, go on to play for ASU and become a professional volleyball player. So Maddie's story is awesome. Maddie's story is awesome. I love it.
She is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments has nothing to do with sports. It's all about a husband and wife showing love to others. This is our story from Baylor and the church under the bridge in Waco, Texas. It's a congregation that meets under an interstate for people who are homeless or who've fallen on hard times, who are underserved. And I went to one of their services back in April of 2024. That's where I met Elaine Clark, who is the church's office manager.
I came around when I was a youth. Pastor Jimmy helped me get off the streets, out of drugs and out of prostitution. I was actually into self-injury, and I actually had tried to kill myself, and the day I got out of the psych hospital, came over here to the church, and Pastor Jimmy came up to me and asked me what I had done. And I was like, that's none of your business. You don't really care. And he told me, yeah, I do. And if you ever try to do that again or think about doing it, come see me at my office. So the next day when I was thinking about hurting myself, I went and saw him at his office. And he started talking to me and then got me volunteering at Mission Waco and had me actually scrubbing toilets. But I started going and seeing him every day, and he kind of became my spiritual dad. And 15 years without self-injury, without drugs, and now I'm where I am because of him.
Pastor Jimmy is Jimmy Dorrell. He and his wife started Church Under the Bridge after having breakfast one morning.
We were outside on their porch and eating and looked over and saw the homeless under the bridge. These were mostly mentally ill to some degree, addicted people. Those terms together are called dually diagnosed. And so we said, we don't understand homelessness very much. Let's go over and invite them to breakfast over here with us. We'll buy their breakfast. They can tell us their stories. And they did. And so 4 or 5 of them came. We spent 2 or 3 hours out there on the porch listening to the stories. And had I grown up like them, I'd have been homeless. It was a lot of pain as they shared their stories. They said, this is so fun. Thanks for listening to us. Let's do it next week. So we came back, and they came, and we bought breakfast again, and they brought a few more friends. By the third week, breakfast was $250, and this was a long time ago. That was a lot of money then. But same results. They just felt affirmed. I said, guys, I can't afford to keep doing this. Janet and I can't do that. But they said, well, why don't you come under the bridge right across the street here and do a Bible study? So we went over. Janet sings and plays the guitar, and so we got some metal chairs and took them over there. It was so loud you could hardly hear anything because it was overhead traffic was so loud. But we sat and did a little Bible study, and she sang, and it was great. They said, hey, do it again next week. So we've been doing it now for 32 years and never went away.
The love these two Baylor grads share for each other and for the people in Waco is remarkable. Everyone I met loved Pastor Jimmy, and that's because he showed love to them. It was just amazing to see him interact with people who had a lot of money and who were willing to donate to his cause, but also the people who he was helping and how he has helped them out. And it's all his love for them. It's really, if we're going to take it in a spiritual sense, it's really what I would consider a Christ-like love for other people, seeing people, realizing that they are in need and being able to help them. And that's why I love that story. By the way, it's the episode name is Churching the Unchurched. It's a really, really good episode. So that was one of my favorite moments of the season.
This has actually been one of the biggest things I've learned on Big Stories is it really just is about people. And every one of these people that we've interviewed, they have an incredible, amazing story or experience. But behind that are a million, micro experiences and little stories of how they really impacted people. And my next tip pick from this season, he is no exception to that, Rob Glass. He just is an incredible coach. And like I mentioned before, I've been around sports pretty much my whole life, and I personally have experienced the difference a good coach can make. So Rob Glass is Oklahoma State's assistant athletic director for speed, strength, and conditioning, and he really has a reputation for inspiring greatness and building elite athletes. And I really think Coach Glass's character shines through the most with the work that he does directing the powerlifting competition for the Special Olympics. One of my favorite parts of his story is the friendship he builds with one of the Special Olympic athletes, Maddie Midori. In the next soundbite, you'll hear from Rob Glass and Maddie's mom, Angela Midori.
Maddie is a very accomplished lifter, and she's been to the World Games herself. And so she was somebody that's been coming back for years, and we just kind of developed a friendship while she was competing.
Well, then one year she just said, will you come play bocce with me? And he's like, I don't even know what that is. She's like, it doesn't matter. And then when he said yes, she's just like, Mom, you're fired.
Let's just say the first year it was a big learning curve for me. I'd never really played, but she was coaching me up on it and how to score and what we needed to do and the strategies.
There's a lot of strategy, and it is very competitive, and these kids don't play around.
So the first year, we got silver, and then the second time around, we ended up getting the gold medal.
For him to just say that he would do that with Madison really meant a lot. So that just tells me the kind of person that he is. He's a big deal, and he could have said no. I just can't do it today. He's a very busy person. His schedule is crazy, but he didn't say no, and so it has really made a difference in Madison.
Coach Glass has worked with all sorts of athletes, but he says that when he goes to the Special Olympics, this is the purest form of competition he's ever seen. Everyone is just so excited and so passionate and really supporting each other, and he says it has been such an honor and privilege for him to work with these athletes.
I also find it interesting, Whitney, that he has inspired other strength coaches, guys that he coached at Oklahoma State, to come back and help him. Kansas State's athletic trainer, he comes back. Middle Tennessee State's trainer, he comes back because those coaches see not only the love that Rob has for the kids, but they also see the same thing, and they love the kids too. And they're there to help them out to become the best versions of themselves. So it's a really, really cool story. All right. One of my other favorite moments from this past season is from the University of Arizona, which is, by the way, where you served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You served down in Tucson, Arizona. So you were really happy I got to go down there. And it was fun to go down there, to be able to go to the African American Museum of Southern Arizona and to talk about Fred Snowden. Now, Fred Snowden, when I was doing research on him to try and figure out a little bit about more of who he was, I heard all these amazing stories about him. But the reason why we wanted to talk to someone about him was because he was the first African-American coach at a major university. Not the first African-American college basketball coach, but the first one at a major university. And he took over in 1972 down there, and he was there for about 10 years. And I got to go down there, and I got to interview two of his former players, Bob Elliott being one of them. And he and his wife helped to run the African-American Museum of Southern Arizona down there. But I also got to talk to his daughter, Stacy. And it was interesting to have her detail how she found notes from him, like a journal even, about some of his early experiences and his early experiences with race in the South. But then also to talk to Stacy about how bad it was at times, the racism that she and her family faced at the University of Arizona.
The death threats were just, this went on for years. They always threatened to, they were going to set our house on fire. They were going to blow it up. I evacuated my house so many times, I don't even remember. These were stunning things. When I got to Tucson, it was really the first time I'd heard the N-word. And it's because I was being called it all the time, and so was my father. My father's first many years of coaching, other coaches and even the officials would not give him the respect to refer to him by his name. They always called him the N-word.
The Fox and his family remained resilient.
He said, we're going to stick this out. We'll be okay. We'll find a way. You know, worse things have happened. He had seen or witnessed worse things in his early days in Alabama. So he said, no, we have to do this. Someone has to be the first. I am the first, and I'm going to ride this out so I'm not the last.
Something that is incredible about Tucson is it really is a basketball town. Like, University of Arizona basketball is a big deal. And it was interesting in the script, which is something I didn't know, but when he was first there, when Fred Snowden was first there as a coach, they really didn't have a ton of fans. There's not a lot of people coming to the games. But his daughter shares that he would recruit everywhere. Like he would talk to people in grocery stores, and gas stations, post offices, whatever it is, and really turn that around to, get really people excited about basketball and help them be passionate as a fan base.
And it's amazing, too, that he did have people that judged him on the color of his skin. But when they started winning, all of a sudden, I'm not saying it went away. It was still there. But a lot of fans were like, oh, this guy can coach too. And that's sad, but it's also encouraging to hear that story. So that was one of my favorites of the season. Since we're talking about the University of Arizona, there's one more. I'll also share one, a second story that we did. And this one was dropped. This episode dropped back in the football season. We featured the Wildcats Adaptive Athletics Program. So I got to interview members of their wheelchair basketball teams. It was a lot of fun. But I also got to interview Josh Wheeler, who played on the Wildcats wheelchair rugby team. After talking to him for a few minutes, I found out we both lived in the same area of Oregon growing up and that some of his friends were some of my friends. So I'm a bit older than he is. We didn't run around in the same crowds in the late 80s and early 90s, but it was cool to have a personal connection to him. Josh was paralyzed from the waist down after a motorcycle accident and eventually ended up in Tucson to play wheelchair rugby.
In 2018 and 2019, we actually won the national championship. That was pretty cool. And then COVID happened. Rugby basically got stopped. It was canceled for everything. And so I was not doing anything. I felt like it was time to go back to school. And I got into U of A and I got funding for it.
He decided to study accounting.
I always liked numbers growing up. I liked spreadsheets. I liked math and all that type of stuff. Accounting is a tough degree. It's not easy. But every time I took one, I was like, I like this. I like it even more. My plan was to get done with my bachelor's degree by May 2024, and I ended up getting my master's degree in that time period too. I now work at an accounting firm here in Tucson.
Now, Josh is a Paralympic athlete who took silver in the 2024 Summer Games. The whole point of this athletic program is to help these students get into college and hopefully help them in their lives. So they want to help them not only play sports, but then to get a degree and do something with that degree. And that was the case with Josh. Now he has a career and a silver medal. Great story to tell.
My last pick from season 2 is Landry Weber. Landry played wide receiver and on special teams for Kansas State football from 2017 to 2020. And as a lot of you probably know, the NCAA allowed him and many other players another year of eligibility due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So Landry was just coming off this incredible season. He has a great relationship with his coaches and teammates, and him and his family are probably some of the biggest K-State fans you can find. And I'm sure Cleon can attest to this because he got to meet them.
Yeah, I got to meet them. I got to see his parents' basement has K-State stuff all over the basement.
So seriously, taking the extra year of eligibility for someone like Landry was a no-brainer. But after a lot of thought and prayer, Landry decides to give up his last year of football to follow a higher calling. And Landry decides to enter the seminary to become a Catholic priest.
And as I approached the end of that year and just going and praying with the Lord, I approached a scripture verse in Luke. It's Luke 9, the end of Luke 9, and it's called the Would-Be Disciples of Christ. And in it, Jesus Christ calls some disciples to follow him. He says, follow me, and they kind of all have excuses why not to follow him. And one of them is, let me go and bury my father first. And it seems on the surface like, oh, well, come on, Jesus, let him go bury his father, But I had someone open up that verse to me that he's actually really what he was telling Jesus is, let me get my inheritance first. Like his father wasn't dead. He's just saying, let my father die. I'll bury him, get my inheritance, and then I'll come follow you. And when I read that, it was just clear that I was that man. I was... The Lord had been calling me for about 5 years up to that point, and I kind of made a promise in that after 5 years, let me finish playing my football career, let me finish living my dream, and then I'll happily give my life to you, Lord. And now I was trying to negotiate, well, 6th year, come on, then I'll give my life to you, let me really finish living my dream and doing what I want to do, and then I'll give my life to you. And that was the moment that I realized I'm this man, and the Lord just telling me, no, I'm asking you to follow me now. Are you willing to give up this thing you love, this dream of yours, and choose me above it? And the only answer I could give was yes, Lord. I'll give up this thing I love for you.
The following year, Kansas State won the Big 12 title game against TCU. And I think there might have been a lot of second guessing from Landry and his dad, but at the end of the day, Landry knew that he made the right decision. Something else I loved from his story is he really shows that you can believe in God and you can love football. And that's kind of the legacy that he wants to leave for everyone, for athletes across the country. That's why he's been so inspirational, is for young kids to realize, you can believe in God, you can love him, you can want to serve him, and still be passionate about sports. So I love the example that he is to future athletes and kids everywhere.
When I talked to him, there was something that I did not include in the podcast, or that we didn't include in the podcast. And it was just like everything that he's doing right now to become a Catholic priest. And there is a lot of work that goes into this. And he was detailing what his day is like in seminary. When I met him, he was actually back in the Kansas City area, actually in Lawrence, Kansas, funny enough. Here he is a K-State grad, but he's over in his enemy territory in Lawrence, Kansas. But he was basically leading service projects and youth ministry and stuff like that in the Lawrence area. But when he's actually in seminary, which is kind of like during the school year, your typical school year, he has so many things that he does, so much that they are studying. And it was very fascinating to hear everything that he's doing to try and become a servant of God. And his parents recognize that too. I mean, they were telling me, they said, he'll come back to the Kansas City area and we want to see him. But there are so many other people that want to see him too. And we realize the benefit he is to the community. And so we have to keep our expectations in check and basically say, you know what, you're here to serve the community and you're here to serve God. And when you find time, we'd love for you to come visit too. My final favorite pick is with Wayne Simeon. He's a former Kansas Jayhawk basketball great who won a world championship with the Miami Heat, played 4 years of professional basketball, then gave it all up to do campus ministry at KU's campus. But my favorite part of this story is that he gave a 25-minute speech on senior night, and he gave all the glory to God, though he was pretty nervous about it.
I was like, man, this is a pretty big responsibility, and, having just become a Christian and want to do all things unto the Lord, my mindset was more of, hey, how can I steward this in a way that is more impactful than just me thanking a few people. It was terrifying. I wasn't a great public speaker. There was obviously the risk of, being ridiculed or booed or being disagreed upon. There was the risk of, being made fun of or, all that was still very, very much alive. But the way that I saw it, it was worth it. Right? Christ gave it all for us, on the cross. Why not give it all for him in every type of moment we have, both big and small? And so it was great to be able to have that fear replaced with, conviction and courage, from the Holy Spirit to be able to see that moment, materialize again into what I hoped it would be.
I mean, who hasn't been in that position, Whitney? I mean, that you're nervous or scared to get up and say something in front of a large crowd. But it's not only that, it's that he's there to take a stand on something and he wants people to know about it. But he did it. So he did it with courage and passion. And pastors Ryan Hickman and John McDermott said it resonated with people inside and outside of Fog Allen Fieldhouse.
Yeah, I think it was probably one of the most significant events that's taken place in Allen Fieldhouse. And I say that as somebody who's a KU basketball fan who's watched some of the greatest games between KU and Missouri. That was one of the most significant moments because you have Allen Fieldhouse, which many people think of as a religious shrine. And it was finally a moment in which God was given his rightful place in which he was glorified.
I heard stories of pastors playing it on Sunday morning. It was that good. Some probably may not have agreed with what he said, but I tell you what, it ignited people's hearts. And wow, there's a man that knows what he believes, and he knows who he believes in.
So Wayne now works for the University of Kansas's athletic department, but those pastors say the sky is the limit for how he can influence people in the future. One of them even said, I wouldn't be surprised if he's like the president or something, or maybe governor, or something like that. He said if he wants to go into politics, he'd probably be successful in politics. But he really has influenced so many different people, and he has such a great heart for the people in the Lawrence, Kansas area.
I really think it's so cool to hear Landry and Wayne's story side by side. Both of them really had a lot of success in sports and with friends, family, whatever it is, but both of them gave it up really to just benefit the community and to help other people. And I feel like for me as a college student, that's really inspiring. Like, of course you want to be great. Of course you want to make it in the big world, have a great job or whatever it is. But really the things that are most important is taking care of others and really focusing on people. So
yeah, cool. I mean, I as a youth, I always thought, it'd be great to be an NBA player.
For sure.
And here's a guy who was an NBA player, and then he decided, you know what, I'm good. I'm good. I think I have a higher calling in my life than what I'm doing right now. And that's a good realization, I think, for all of us, that no matter what we're doing, there's something greater that we can do. So Wayne and Landry, they provide good examples for all of us. All right, Whitney, any last words from season 2 of Big Stories?
Seriously, it has been such a pleasure working on the show. And many of you might know this, but Cleon has the cool job of getting to go out and to interview these people face to face. And for me, I'm just here. I don't get to meet them, but hearing their stories, I really feel like I know them. And I hope that as you guys listen to these episodes, that you really are inspired to work hard, to push boundaries and really build a life that you're super proud of. So it has been such an honor and so fun to be a part of these Big Stories. So thank you, Cleon.
All right. Thank you, Whitney. That's going to do it for season 2 of Big Stories. We will be back at the start of the football season with season 3. And that's from BYU Sports Nation and BYU Radio. Please tell your friends about Big Stories. Give us a rating and review on whatever podcast platform you use. And make sure you catch BYUtv's Big Stories by logging on to BYUSN.com. Big Stories is a production of BYU Radio.